All right, let's get started here. What I'm going to do is run you through a couple of resets when you have a little bit of problem with your Ulterra motor and it getting stuck in the down position. Most of the time that happens when you run somebody automatically or accidentally disconnects your trolling motor from battery power without shutting it down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this motor, and we're going to run through a couple of scenarios that may happen to you while you're out fishing. So let's pretend we're out fishing and we're having a good day and we're going along and your Ulterra is down and it will trim up and down and it's going to stow without any trouble. Like, we can trim it up and down and it's operating for us. And then all of a sudden somebody comes along and they trip over the wire that connects it to the boat and accidentally shuts the power off. And I don't mean turning the switch off, I mean unplugging it physically from power. So you get up to the front and all of a sudden none of the lights are lit on here. It's telling me, oh, we've had a power issue. So it could be we've disconnected it from power, or maybe your batteries have gotten to a point where they're dead, or we have a connection at the batteries that's come loose, or at a lot of batteries we have little circuit breakers that will trip if we're using the motor too much or too hard for too long. There's a bunch of small things that could cause this to happen. Nevertheless, now this unit is stuck down. So I'm going to reconnect my power, pretend we're plugging it back into the boat. Here I'm disconnecting it to a battery, but let's pretend we plugged it back in. I come up here and I turn it on, but let's say it won't stow or deploy anymore. Because what has happened when we've disconnected it from power is we've confused the board on here, and it now thinks its shaft length is only this long instead of this. So it's forgot its shaft length and it's forgot its park position. And if you could get it to come up, it may come up crooked. We're going to try and see what's going to happen when we try to stow. So this one's going to come up and it's going to be straight and it's going to stow no problem. So disconnecting it from power didn't cause that to happen, but lots of times it will. So now we're going to do a fake power interruption, and I'll show you how to reset. So let's say that this is down, the unit is stuck in the down position, and let's say it's way out of shape and it won't go up and it won't go down and you're frustrated. So what I want you to do, before you plug it back into power and before you turn the power on, I want you to come up and I want you to grab the head of this thing. And I want you to twist this motor gently into the position that I want it to land on the ramps, how I want it to park. Do I want the prop on this side? Do I want the prop on this side? Lots of times you can tell just by the wear marks. Right now, let's say we can't tell because we're in the water. We're floating up and down and we're in the water. But that's where I want it to be. I can plug it into power if it was unplugged, and I can turn the power on. Then I want you to push the power button 3 consecutive times. And what's going to happen is this motor is going to go all the way up and it's going to hit the bottom of the extrusion, and then it's going to drop down 10 inches. But I want you to make sure that if you have wires that run in the coil cord, that they're free to travel up and down without any binding, because if it starts binding, it'll stop that process and we got to start all over again. So we push the button 3 times. It's come up to the bottom of the motor. It looks like it's going to land fairly close. It's a little offset. And then we're going to look at our remote and it's going to tell us we can stow it. So I'm going to press the stow button and I'm going to let it stow. And you see here it's kind of coming up a little bit of an angle and it's hitting the ramp. Now we can fix that very quickly. What I'm going to do is, I'm happy with what has happened so far. So I'm going to tell you to shut the power off to your trolling motor. And then I want you to go over here and I want you to unplug the power from your boat, because that will reset the computer and reset our shaft length and reset our park position. But now we're going to fix the park position. So let's turn it on and we're going to deploy it. And you see how it dropped down? We're going to fix that. So we're sitting here we're gonna stow now. But when I start the stow procedure, when this motor lays down in the horizontal position, before this motor hits the ramps, I want to hit the pause button. And on most of these remotes, the stow button turns into the pause button. So we're going to start the stow, and as soon as it's going to lay down, I'm going to push pause. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to correct the motor. I'm actually going to go a little bit past where I want it to land, and then I'm going to finish the stow off. And then I'm going to shut it off and I'm going to disconnect it from power. So that should reset our position. We may have to fine tune it a couple times, but that's going to reset our position. Now I'm going to talk about a couple other things. We'll send this down and we'll see how we did. Maybe we have to redo it or fine tune it. It looks like it's holding pretty nicely. But let's say you were out fishing and this happens to you. And you go to stow it and that motor's coming up and it's coming up like this, not coming up to lay in the cradle. So I don't want you to allow that to pull into the holder or jam itself in there, because then you have a real headache. What I want you to do is to pause it when it lays down, walk over, straighten it out till it lands in the cradle, and you should be good to go. We're gonna steer this a little bit, and I'm going to stow it to see if we've got our position. I like the park position. It's nice and flat and horizontal, so our setting worked very well. So we're going to deploy this, and let's say that we used to have our prop on the other side and we liked it on the other side, but it won't allow us to correct it 180 degrees. It'll keep bringing you back here. The only way to correct 180 degrees out, which we can do quite easily, is I want you to turn the motor off, but I don't want you to unplug it from power. I just want it turned off and I want it in this position. There's a little lever here that sometimes is a little difficult to pull, but I want you to pull that out and I want you to lift this motor and we'll separate these two halves. Then I want you to spin it right around and then pull that lever again and make sure it's locked in place. We now have reset it so that it'll park in this position 180 degrees out. I'll show you on a stow. We'll stow it and it's going to come up at 180. We may have to play with the park position a little bit because we're dropping a little, but I'm going to put this motor back to its original setting because it looks like that's where the owner has had it. So we're going to deploy it again. We're going to flip this motor around so you'll get an idea of how that worked. So motor's down, we want to change this by 180. And notice I'm not turning it this way, I'm turning it this way because I don't want to wrap the cable around, because if you wrap the cable around, it's going to follow you in that direction. So I pulled that lever, I turned it around, I locked it in place. Now we should be good to stow this unit and put it back in the park position. I'm just going to test it to make sure it's going to load correctly. Yeah, perfect. So those are a couple of the easy ways to reset this motor once you have power supplied to it. One other thing I'm going to give you guys as a piece of advice: if you own an Ulterra and you have the old style quick slide in bracket, change that out for the Ulterra quick release bracket, because let's say that is down and you don't have no battery power to lift it up. With this unit, you have to do a manual stow, which is a lot of work. That's all over the internet. You can find those videos anywhere. But my suggestion is, let's say that this is deployed and it's stuck in the down position. We have no power, we can't get this thing to run. The easiest thing that you can do is, with this type of mechanism, all you do is pull a lever and this thing will separate and you can bring that into the boat, go home, fix your battery problem, go out fishing, put it back in the water just like I did with this flip of a lever. This one, it has to slide backwards to get the motor off. Well, you can't slide this motor backwards because we're going to keep hitting the shaft against the boat. That's another suggestion I have for Ulterra owners that maybe they bought it as a first gen Ulterra and this bracketry wasn't around, or the dealer you had decided to go for that because it was cheaper. This is a little more money, but it's way more convenient. That's all I got for you.